Hi, I'm Rainer, and welcome to my training room. Today I am working on making some trees. Now, you've probably seen them if you've looked at some of my older videos. You might have seen as part of those videos me making some trees, but I've never made a video dedicated to that, actually. So I thought I'd try to do it in a little more detail today. And part of it I'm going to be doing in here, part of it I'm going to be doing out in the garage, because when I'm spraying paint and doing things like that, I really don't want to do it in the training room here and end up with spray paint and glue and all kinds of that kind of stuff flying through the air. But the first part I can do in here, so I thought I'd show you. So two basic raw materials that I use for making the stem of the tree and the branches are just some old twine or some twine. Having some thicker twine to make it from might work better. This spool of twine I basically inherited from my dad when he was going through his stuff when he passed away, and I found this very large spool of twine that I have no idea why he had it, and I had no other use for it, so I'm making trees out of it. And then the other thing I need is copper wire, and I bought this spool of copper wire, 18 gauge copper wire, on Amazon. Can't remember how much I paid for it. So for this thing, I've cut these lengths of copper wire just using plain old wire cutters, and these are what, 14, 15 inches long, something like that. And the twine, what I do with these is I just go along and cut the twine into lengths like this. These are currently about 3-inch long sections. You can go longer, you can go shorter. This I have found seems to work for me for my trees pretty well. So I will just do a few of them here and then show you the procedure. Normally I do a whole pile of them because making the trees, well, it's like anything. When you do a lot of them at once, it's a lot easier to just unravel a pile of these things. So sometimes I've actually sat there at my desk while watching other people's YouTube videos or participating in some live stream or something like that, just watching a live stream. I will sit there and unravel twine. So I have a bundle of it here that's kind of a mess from the last time I did some trees, so just thought I'd show you a fresh batch here. I just try to separate it like this into, if not individual strands, then almost individual strands. So it does take a little bit of time to do, but not a terrible job. Certainly not difficult, just takes time. Occasionally you will find some that are all tangled up. They have these little slubs in them and they're just a mess. And if there's just a clump of twine, just throw that part out, because you want the individual strands. That one looked pretty good, but every once in a while you end up with a clump in there, and it's just no sense fighting with that. It's not going to work properly. Like that one right there is just this tangled lump. It's not worth dealing with. Okay, that should be enough to do a tree or two, so I will just show you the next part of the procedure, and then I will off camera continue to make a whole pile more of them, because I don't want to go out in the garage and set everything up for only 1 or 2 trees. So I will just demonstrate this part, and then I will get some more stuff done. So what I have here is just an old piece of wood, chunk of rough 1x4 that I have put a screw into. I put a screw into it part way, and if you can see it on the camera, I just cut the head off the screw to give me a metal post to stick up. A screw would work, straight nail with no head, anything like that would work. And then I just clamp this on to give me a spot to do this, and then I will stand up, because there are certain things you just need to stand up to do. Okay, and I try to find roughly the middle of the thing, and then I just put one twist in it to kind of hold it in place. And then I can, yeah, that'll work. What I find is I want to have roughly the middle of all of them. So I just kind of start grabbing the ends like this and pulling them through. It also helps separate any of them that were still kind of stuck together. Doesn't need to be perfect though. Just go like that, put them in here. And then what I do is try the best I can to spread these out. And then when I think it's pretty good, go in here, give it a couple of twists like this, and leave that like that. And this is where the cordless drill comes in. I have the chuck open, just hold it, carefully turn it. And then you have to go through and kind of unravel anything that got caught. Because what happens is some of the fibers end up twisting around the stem and, well, just makes your branches shorter, so you don't want that too much. So this, at this point, you can do this to make a tree that kind of looks like anything up to this point. Now, what you do next is what determines the kind of the shape of the tree and things like that. And if you look at this from the top, that's a kind of a scraggly looking mess, but that's okay because trees in nature are sometimes kind of a scraggly looking mess, so that's okay. So what I do at this point, I will just cut that extra little bit off the top. And then I am going to try to make this to look into some sort of like a spruce tree type of thing. The bottoms here are still a bit tangled. So now, at this point, what I can do is this base of it, don't worry about it being extra long. That's okay. I can go like this and then cut up into the top because I am trying to make a fairly narrow tree out of this one. Remember, you're just dealing with little bits of twine, so the stuff you're cutting off it's not like you're wasting something that's an expensive material. So it's always good to look at it from a few different directions and cut off some of the hanging stuff down here. And then what I will do is I will cut this extra twist off the bottom. And then this just goes into my piece of styrofoam. I will now make a whole pile more of these, and then after that, I will see you again once I go in the garage for the next step of making these trees. So the next step in the process is to take the trees outside in the garage and give the stem and branches a coat of paint. And for the first batch of trees, I used a flat black paint. And then I did a couple of other batches of trees where I used brown and then a dark gray primer for the color of the stems. It just gives the trees a different look for a different style of tree. I then let the paint dry completely, and then the next step and the final step in the process is to give a quick shot of spray adhesive to the tree and then sprinkle the foliage on. And for the first batch of trees, I used a fine green foam that I purchased on AliExpress. and then actually gave the trees a quick misting of a dark green paint, just to darken them up a little bit, and then I sprinkled just a little bit of static grass, short static grass on them that's a brighter green, just to give it a little bit of highlights on the ends of the branches and the top of the tree. The next batch of trees that I did, I used the same foliage, but I didn't give them the shot of paint. I just wanted to get a little bit of a different color to them. And then I did another batch of trees, just 4 of them, where I used some foliage. It was like a grass leaf foliage that I got from Model Builder Supply, and sprinkled it on them. And it's kind of a multicolored green with a few other little colors mixed in it. And it looks pretty good for a broadleaf tree. Unfortunately, Model Builder Supply, I read online, is going to be going out of business shortly, so I won't be able to buy more of that stuff from them. But that's what I used. I kind of used the last of what I had of that color. That was enough for 4 trees. And then I did some trees with some fall colors, that same kind of foliage, but a yellow and orange mix that I got from them. So this is the end result, plus about 10 trees that I've already put on the layout. So these trees, if you can see, hopefully you can see it, are cut a little bit narrower. I just cut the branches, the little bits of twine. I cut those with scissors just a little bit shorter, made a kind of a narrower profile on the trees. The idea is they would look more like evergreens or something like that. They also have the flat black stem and branches, and so I just sprinkled foliage on them, and these also got a little sprinkling of static grass at the top, so it makes the top look a little bit brighter green than the rest of the tree. I don't know if that comes through in the video, but that's what I did on them. This middle tray I sprayed with a light brown paint. So these 4 are done with a green grass foliage mix from Model Builder Supply. It's more of a light little flake type of a material, whereas this is kind of a ground foam material. Both are a very fine mix, so they just do have a little bit of a different look. This looks more like little leaves on it. And then this row is one of their autumn mixes. It's like a yellow-orange autumn mix of they call it grass or whatever, but I find it works well for foliage on these trees. So these 2 rows are both from Model Builder Supply. The foliage is from Model Builder Supply. This is a green, and this is kind of a yellow-orange autumn mix. And then this batch of trees, I painted the stems with a dark gray primer. And it's interesting because the foliage on these 8 trees here, and most of these here, other than this disaster in the back corner, is the exact same foliage out of the same bag, but these look a lot lighter simply because the branches and the stem are a lighter color. So the black really makes a big difference in how the whole tree looks. There's a tree in the back corner here that I had some of what I thought, it was an unopened bag that I thought was more of a red color of the same stuff as this, but it turned out it was more kind of foam clumps, and I tried using it and it didn't really work, so I just sprinkled some of the same yellow stuff on the tree and ended up with a bit of a disaster. I think that one's probably going to just get tossed because it does not look very good. Anyway, this is how I do the trees. Nothing fancy, nothing complicated. Every tree is a little bit different, and that's one of the things I like about it, because in nature every tree is a little bit different, whereas if you buy a lot of the pre-made trees, often what you get is a whole bunch of trees that look all the same, and you're not going to have that much happening in the real world unless you're at some Christmas tree farm where somebody's got a manicured, landscaped yard and they've trimmed every tree to look the same. So I like the variety that I get out of this. Honestly, I did not come up with these ideas. I have looked at a lot of other YouTube videos of other people doing trees, and I just came up with this is my variation of it. I'm not saying this is the best way to make the trees, but this is how I do them, and it works for me. So with that, I think I'm going to try to get these trees planted on the layout, and once I get them up there, I will show you on video what they end up looking like and where I ended up putting them, because I had especially these narrower trees, I had a specific place in mind for them. So once I get them up there, I'll show you what the plan was and how it actually worked. So this is where I've planted most of the new trees. One over there, a whole pile of them along this side of the track, and then a few more around that curve on this side of the track. And that's why I wanted to make some of the trees fairly narrow, because I wanted to be able to put them on top of the embankment, but not have them overhang onto the tracks. So most of the pre-made trees you find that are of that height, a lot of them end up being too wide. They end up hanging onto the tracks, and then the train would hit the trees when it goes by. I didn't really want to have too many trees planted at the bottom of the hill, at least for now, because I want to be able to use this flat space for buildings and other things like that. But I wanted to have the visual separation of the rear track compared to the front ones, because that upper track is actually a separate loop. It's on the same level of the deck, but the reality is that this bottom loop goes around, and then it goes all the way around and then continues up there. So I wanted to have a little bit of visual separation here between this foreground and the background track. And so now I'll run a train up there. Now you can still see the track, you can still see the train, but it gives you a little bit of separation because the train is now running up behind some trees. So that was the idea. I'm happy with how it's turning out. I'll probably end up putting some more smaller shrubs and things like that. But for now, it gives you a little bit of separation, and the same thing over there. I really didn't have room on the other side of the tracks for more trees, so putting some on this side kind of hides the wall a little bit. Overall, happy with how it turned out. I did use a couple of the trees in other places. I did put some of the yellow fall color trees over there on the hill on the opposite end, and I'll show you that in an upcoming video. You'll see it in a cab ride or whatever I do. There's only, I think, 4 of them that I put up there, and I currently have them propped up because that one is all a plaster shell on wires, so they don't want to stand straight until the glue dries. So that's kind of my tree building project for today. The trees you see in the window box at the back, you can look at one of my recent videos of how I built that. They all lift out if I need to. They're all pre-built trees that I bought online, whereas the trees on this side of the track are all the trees that I've made in this video. So hopefully that gives you some ideas if you want to build some trees. Not necessarily the best way to build the trees, but it's how I do it. Hopefully you've learned something from this. So I've got more videos coming up soon. If you don't want to miss them, please subscribe. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.